Captain Hein Wu stood on the bridge of the starship Taeguk, watching the massive space station grow larger on the screen. Nexus Prime was the biggest thing he had ever seen. It was like a metal city floating in space with thousands of ships, coming and going like busy insects. "Sir, we're getting a message from the station," said Lieutenant Taemin from his seat at the communications panel. "Put it on screen," Haiyan Wu said. A strange face appeared on the main display. It looked like a giant insect with 6 eyes and sharp teeth. When it spoke, the voice was translated by their computers. "Human vessel, you are cleared to dock at Bay 47. Follow the guide lights. Do not deviate from the path." Haiyan Wu nodded to his pilot. "Take us in, Young Ho." The Taeguk slowly moved toward the massive station. Haiyan Wu felt excited and nervous at the same time. This was humanity's first official meeting with the Galactic Council. Earth had been working toward this moment for 50 years, ever since they invented faster-than-light travel. Ambassador Jihai walked onto the bridge. She was wearing her best diplomatic uniform, and her face showed the same mix of excitement and worry that Haiyan Wu felt. "Are you ready for this?" she asked him. "As ready as anyone can be for meeting aliens, I guess," Haiyan Wu replied with a small smile. The docking process took an hour. When they finally connected to the station, Haiyan Wu could hear strange sounds through the walls. Different kinds of music, voices that didn't sound human, and mechanical noises he couldn't identify. The airlock opened with a hiss. A tall, thin alien stood waiting for them. It had blue skin and 4 arms, and it wore what looked like an official uniform. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," the alien said in perfect English. "I am Guide Veltar. Please follow me to the council chamber." The human delegation walked through corridors filled with the strangest sights Haiyan Wu had ever imagined. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the hallways. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others crawled on many legs, and some seemed to float in the air. The walls were covered with symbols and writing in languages Earth's computers couldn't translate. "How many species are in the Galactic Council?" Ambassador Jihai asked their guide. "Currently, there are 2,847 member species," Veltar replied. "Humanity would be the 2,848th if you are accepted." Military advisor Taemin, who had joined them from the ship, looked around with sharp eyes. Haiyan Wu knew Taemin was noting security details and potential threats. It was his job to keep the diplomatic team safe. They entered a huge round chamber with seats arranged in circles going up toward the ceiling. Thousands of different aliens sat in those seats, all looking down at the center where the humans now stood. The noise was incredible, a mixture of sounds from creatures that had evolved on different worlds under different stars. A massive insect-like being rose from the central platform. It had to be at least 3 meters tall, with chitinous armor covering its body and 6 eyes that seemed to look in all directions at once. "I am Chancellor Krikstal of the Vexthari Empire," it announced. Its voice boomed through speakers around the chamber. "We welcome the human delegation to this historic gathering." Ambassador Jihai stepped forward. "Thank you, Chancellor. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we are honored to be here. We come seeking friendship and cooperation with the galactic community." A sound filled the chamber that Haiyan Wu realized was laughter, but from thousands of different species, it sounded more like a storm of weird noises. Chancellor Krikstal raised one of its many arms for silence. "Cooperation, yes. Friendship is a concept we will discuss. But first, you must understand how galactic civilization functions." A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, showing images of different worlds and species. "Every civilization that joins our community contributes according to their abilities," the Chancellor continued. "Some provide technology, others provide resources, and some provide labor." The hologram showed aliens working in mines, factories, and farms, but something about the images bothered Haiyan Wu. The workers moved in strange, mechanical ways, and their faces seemed empty of expression. "For humanity to join us," Chancellor Krikstal said, "you must provide your contribution. Based on our analysis of human capabilities, Earth will provide 40% of its population for labor assignments throughout the galaxy. The words hit the human delegation like a physical blow. Ambassador Jihai's face went pale. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Did you say 40% of our population?" "That is correct," the Chancellor replied as if discussing the weather. "Approximately 3 billion humans will be relocated to worlds where their labor is needed. This is standard procedure for all new member species." Taemin stepped forward, his hand moving instinctively toward where his weapon would be if he were allowed to carry one in the council chamber. "You're talking about slavery," he said, his voice hard with anger. The chamber erupted in that strange alien laughter again. When it died down, a new voice spoke. This one came from a reptilian creature with scales that seemed to shift color as it moved. "I am Emperor Thekmer of the Sauron Empire," the creature said. "Human, your primitive concepts of individual freedom are incompatible with galactic progress. Every species that has joined our community has understood this basic truth." "Every species?" Hyan-Wu asked, finding his voice despite his shock. "Every single one," Chancellor Krikstal confirmed. "The aquatic collective of Tidal, the Zephyrian Cloud Cities, the cybernetic Nexus Network, all understood that personal freedom is a luxury that advanced civilizations cannot afford. Your species will learn this as well." Ambassador Jihai straightened her shoulders. Despite the shock, her diplomatic training took over. "Chancellor, members of the Council, surely there must be some misunderstanding. Humanity values freedom and individual rights above almost everything else. We cannot and will not surrender 40% of our people." "Cannot or will not?" asked another voice. This one belonged to a crystalline being that seemed to be made of living glass. "I am Admiral Vikthul of the Zarian Hegemony. We have weapons that can turn your entire planet to dust. You will comply, or you will be made to comply." The threat hung in the air like poison. Han-Wu felt his heart pounding as he looked around the chamber. Thousands of alien faces stared down at them, and he saw no sympathy in any of them. These beings had all accepted slavery as normal. They expected humanity to do the same. "We need time to consider this," Ambassador Jihai said, though Hyan-Wu could hear the desperation in her voice. "Time?" Chancellor Krikstal's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Very well. You have one standard galactic day to discuss this among yourselves. But understand, this is not a negotiation. This is how things are done." "This is how they have always been done?" Guide Veltar appeared beside them again. "I will escort you to temporary quarters where you may deliberate." As they walked through the corridors back toward their ship, none of the humans spoke. The weight of what they had learned pressed down on them like a physical force. Every alien they passed was either a slave or a master, and the masters expected humanity to choose which they would be when they finally reached the Taiguk. Han-Wu sealed the airlock behind them and turned to his companions. "Well," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "that didn't go quite as planned." Ambassador Jihai sat down heavily in a chair. 3 billion people, she whispered. "They want us to hand over 3 billion people. And if we don't?" Taemin asked, though they all knew the answer. "Then they'll take them anyway," Hyan-Wu replied. "Or they'll destroy us trying." They had come to the stars hoping to find friends and allies. Instead, they had found something far worse than enemies. They had found a galaxy that had forgotten what freedom meant, and expected humanity to forget it too. The question now was simple. Would Earth surrender its people to join this galactic civilization? Or would humanity stand alone against the darkness between the stars? In his heart, Hyan-Wu already knew what Earth's answer would be. The only question was whether they would survive giving it. 6 months had passed since the Taiguk returned to Earth with news that shook humanity to its core. Now Admiral Vikthul's massive fleet hung in space just beyond Earth's moon like a sword waiting to fall. President Myung stood at the window of the United Earth Government building in Seoul, watching the news broadcasts on screens throughout the city. Every channel showed the same terrifying sight: thousands of alien ships blocking out the stars. "Madam President," her aide said from behind her, "the council is ready for you." Mi-young nodded and walked toward the emergency session chamber. The weight of 6 billion lives pressed down on her shoulders. In 30 minutes, she would have to make the most important decision in human history. The chamber was full of Earth's leaders. General Sang-ho of the Earth Defense Force sat at one table, his uniform crisp despite the sleepless nights he'd been having. Secretary Bioram, the head of diplomatic relations, sat across from him with a stack of reports about alien military capabilities. Scientists, military officers, and politicians from every nation on Earth filled the remaining seats. At the center of the room, a holographic display showed Admiral Vikthal. The crystalline alien's form shifted and sparkled as it spoke. "People of Earth," Vikthal said, its voice translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "You have had 6 months to consider our generous offer. The Galactic Council requires your answer now. Will you provide 40% of your population for productive labor assignments, or will you force us to take corrective action?" President Mi-young stepped forward. "Admiral, before we give our answer, we have questions." "Ask them quickly," Vec_Thal replied. "My fleet has other duties to attend to." General Sang-ho stood up. "We've studied your ships during these 6 months. Your technology is clearly superior to ours. But we want to know, has any species ever refused your offer and survived?" The chamber fell silent. This was the question everyone wanted answered but was afraid to ask. Admiral Vikthal's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly. "Several species have been unwise in their initial responses. The Korthani Empire resisted for nearly 200 years before they understood the futility of their position. The ethereal collective attempted to hide in parallel dimensions. The silicon-based architects tried to negotiate. What happened to them?" Secretary Bioram asked, though her voice suggested she already knew. "They no longer exist," Vikthal said. "Simply, resistance is not only futile, it is ultimately self-destructive. Those who cannot adapt to galactic civilization have no place in it." Dr. Jung Ki, Earth's leading expert on alien technology, had been studying readings from the alien fleet. During the long months of waiting, his team had managed to scan several alien ships using Earth's most advanced sensors. "Admiral," Dr. Jun Ki said, standing up from his seat, "we've detected some unusual energy signatures from your ships. There appear to be life forms aboard that don't match the crew profiles." For the first time, Admiral Vikthal seemed uncomfortable. "Your primitive sensors are obviously malfunctioning." But Dr. Junki's partner, Engineer Hae-won, had been working on the same data. She stood up now, holding a tablet with their analysis. "No, sir, our sensors are working fine," she said. "We've detected the remains of extinct civilizations in your ship databases. Technologies, art, and biological signatures from species that supposedly chose to join your galactic community willingly. You have 15 minutes to give your answer," Admiral Vikthal said, clearly wanting to end this line of questioning. "Comply or face the consequences." The hologram disappeared, leaving the human leaders alone in the chamber. "Well, President," Mi-young said, looking around the room, "we all know what we're really choosing between. Slavery or extinction." General Sang-ho slammed his fist on the table. "We can't fight them. Our entire fleet has maybe 300 ships. They have thousands. Our weapons are toys compared to theirs." But we can't just hand over 3 billion people," Secretary Bioram said. "Even if we tried, which humans would we choose? Who decides who gets enslaved and who stays free?" Dr. Jun-ki raised his hand. "Actually, I don't think they plan to leave anyone free. Based on what we've learned about other species, I believe they'll eventually enslave all of us. They're just starting with 40% to make it seem reasonable." The room erupted in arguments. Military leaders demanded they fight, even if it was hopeless. Diplomats argued for negotiation, trying to buy time or reduce the numbers. Scientists presented data showing the aliens' overwhelming technological advantage. Through it all, President Mi-young sat quietly, thinking about a message that had arrived at her office that morning. It wasn't from any government leader or military advisor. It was from a 10-year-old girl named So-min from Bazan, The little girl had somehow gotten the president's personal communication address and sent a simple video message. Somin had looked directly into the camera with serious dark eyes and said, "President Myung, my teacher says the space people want to take some of us away to work for them. I don't understand why we would want to be friends with people who hurt others. If, they're mean to other people, won't they be mean to us too?" The simple wisdom of a child had cut through all the complex political and military arguments. Somin was right. Why would humanity want to join a civilization built on cruelty? As the arguments continued around her, President Myung made her decision. She stood up and walked to the communication panel. "This is President Myung of Earth," she said, opening a channel to Admiral Victhalus' fleet. "We have our answer." The alien admiral appeared on screen again, its crystalline form glittering with what might have been anticipation. "Excellent. Please transmit the coordinates for your first population collection centers." "No," President Myung said simply. "I'm sorry, I didn't understand your response. I said no." Earth's answer is no. We will not provide any of our people for slavery. We will not join your galactic civilization. We choose to remain free. The silence that followed was deafening. Every person in the chamber stared at their president, some with admiration, others with terror. Admiral Victhalus' form seemed to grow brighter and more angular. "You realize what this means?" "Yes," President Myung replied. "It means we're willing to die as free humans rather than live as slaves." "Very well," the admiral said. "You have chosen extinction. We will begin. Bombardment of your major cities in 1 hour. Perhaps watching their homes burn will help your people reconsider." The transmission ended. General Sang-ho immediately began shouting orders into his communicator, alerting Earth's defenses. Secretary Bo Ram frantically tried to reopen communications with the alien fleet, but President Myung remained calm. She activated the global broadcast system, sending her words to every screen, radio, and communication device on Earth. "People of Earth," she began, "6 months ago, we reached out to the galaxy hoping to find friends among the stars. Instead, we found an empire built on slavery that demands we sacrifice our freedom to join them. Around the world, people stopped what they were doing to listen. In homes, offices, schools, and factories, humanity heard their leaders' words. They have given us a choice: surrender 40% of our people to slavery or face destruction. Some might say we should negotiate, find a compromise, save who we can. But the child reminded me today of something important. We don't want to be friends with people who hurt others." On the screens, President Myung's face was calm but determined. "Earth's answer is no. We will not trade our freedom for survival. We will not sacrifice some of our people to save others. We are humanity and we stand together, free or not at all." The broadcast ended, but its impact rippled across the planet. In the hour before the bombardment began, something extraordinary happened. No one ran, no one hid. Instead, people gathered in the streets, in homes, in public places. They held hands, they sang songs. They told each other they loved them. When Admiral Victhalus' ships opened fire, they found Earth's people standing together, unbroken in spirit, even as their cities burned. But the alien admiral had made a crucial mistake. He had assumed that humanity's answer came from desperation or ignorance. He didn't understand that it came from something much more dangerous, a species that valued freedom more than life itself. Earth's resistance was about to begin, and the galaxy would learn that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the odds. Captain Dalsu gripped the controls of his destroyer, the Arang. As 50,000 alien ships filled the space around Earth, the human fleet looked like toys next to the massive galactic armada. Earth had only managed to build 200 combat ships in the 6 months since first contact, and most of them were converted cargo vessels with weapons bolted on. "All ships, this is Admiral Jinnah," came the voice over the communication system. She had been promoted after Captain Hyun Woo was captured during a diplomatic mission that went wrong. "Today we fight not for victory, but for the idea that some things are worth dying for. Make every shot count." Dalsu looked at his crew. They were young, most of them barely out of training. His weapons officer, Corporal Dongmin, was only 19 years old. His navigator, Lieutenant Haijin, had been working at a civilian shipping company just a year ago. "Sir," Dongmin said, his voice shaking slightly, "the alien ships are moving into attack formation." Through the view screen, Dalsu could see the massive alien vessels arranging themselves in perfect geometric patterns. It was like watching a deadly dance performed by creatures who had done this thousands of times before. "They fight like machines," Lieutenant Haijin observed. "Look at how perfectly spaced they are." Dalsu nodded. That was exactly what bothered him about the alien formations. They were too perfect, too predictable. It was as if the crews had no imagination, no ability to think for themselves. "Attention human vessels," Admiral Vikfil's voice echoed across all frequencies. "You have 30 seconds to surrender before we destroy you. Your resistance is meaningless." Dalsu opened his ship's communication channel. "This is Captain Dalsu of the Earth Destroyer Erring. Come and try to destroy us, you crystal-faced monster." The battle began with a wave of energy beams that lit up space like deadly fireworks. The alien weapons were incredibly powerful, turning several human ships into vapor in the first few seconds. But the humans had advantages the aliens didn't expect. "Haijin, get us in close to that big ship," Dalsu ordered, pointing at a massive Vextari hive vessel. "Sir, our weapons can't penetrate their shields at any distance," Dongmin reported. "Who said anything about weapons?" Dalsu replied with a grim smile. "Ram it, sir?" "You heard me, full speed, right into their engine section." "Lieutenant." Haijin stared at her captain like he'd lost his mind. "Sir, that's suicide." "Maybe, but it's also the last thing they'll expect." The Arang suddenly changed course, accelerating directly toward the alien hive ship. Dalsu could hear alarm sounds coming from the alien vessel as its crew tried to figure out what the humans were doing. "No rational species would attempt such a maneuver," came a translated voice from the alien ship. "They must be malfunctioning." But Dalsu wasn't malfunctioning. He was thinking like a human, unpredictable, creative, and willing to take risks that no enslaved crew would ever consider. At the last second, he changed course slightly, scraping along the alien ship's hull instead of crashing into it. The Arang's hull tore open in several places, but they managed to deploy a team of Marines onto the enemy vessel before pulling away. "This is Commander Yujin," came a voice over the radio. "Boarding team is aboard the alien ship. You're not going to believe what we're seeing in here." Commander Yujin and her Marines had blasted their way through an airlock and found themselves in a corridor filled with the strangest sight any human had ever witnessed. Alien beings were working at control stations, but they moved like robots. Their eyes were vacant, and they responded to the human intrusion slowly, as if they couldn't quite understand what was happening. "They're slaves," Yujin reported back to the fleet. "The entire crew is enslaved. They're not even trying to stop us." As our team moved through the ship, they found something even more shocking. In the lower levels, thousands of beings from dozens of different species were chained to workstations. When they saw humans fighting freely, something extraordinary happened. The slaves began to fight back against their guards. "The slaves are revolting," Yujin shouted into her communicator. "Seeing us fight is making them remember what freedom looks like." Across the battle zone, the same thing was happening on other alien ships. Enslaved crews were sabotaging their own vessels, refusing orders, and in some cases attacking their masters. The perfect galactic fleet began to fall apart as the very people operating it remembered what it meant to be free. Dr. Yunsu, working aboard the Earth Defense Station orbiting the Moon, had been studying captured alien technology. She had discovered something incredible in the biological systems the aliens used to control their slaves. "Admiral Jinnah," she called over the fleet communication system, "I've found something. The aliens use a biological agent to make their slaves obedient. I think I can reverse it." "How?" Admiral Jinnah replied while maneuvering her flagship between two alien cruisers. "I've developed what I'm calling the liberation virus. If we can get it into their air systems, it should break The mental conditioning that keeps their slaves obedient. Do it, Admiral Jenna ordered. Dr. Yunsu released her virus through a network of small drones that the human fleet had been carrying. The tiny devices were too small for the alien weapons to target effectively, and they spread throughout the galactic fleet like invisible messengers of freedom. Within hours, the effect was dramatic. Slave revolts broke out on hundreds of alien ships. Crews that had been perfectly obedient for centuries suddenly remembered anger, hope, and the desire for freedom. The battle turned into chaos. Some alien ships found themselves fighting their own crews. Others went dead in space as their enslaved operators shut down critical systems. A few actually switched sides, their newly freed crews turning their weapons on their former masters. Captain Dalsu found himself in the strange position of receiving a surrender message from an alien captain. Human vessel, this is Captain Zethmar of the former Sauron Empire ship Devastator. My crew has overthrown their slavers. We request permission to join your fleet. Dalsu looked at his communications officer in amazement. Permission granted, I guess. But Admiral Vigthal was not about to let the battle slip away so easily. The crystalline admiral ordered his remaining loyal ships to begin targeting the revolting vessels, destroying them along with their enslaved crews. If they choose freedom, they choose death, Vigthal broadcast to his fleet. Destroy all compromised vessels. The alien fleet began turning its weapons on its own ships. The space around Earth became a three-way battle between loyal galactic forces, revolting slaves, and the small but determined human fleet. Admiral Jin saw an opportunity. While the aliens were distracted fighting each other, she ordered the human fleet to target the command ships. If they could take out the leaders, the rest of the fleet might collapse. All ships, concentrate fire on Admiral Vigthal's flagship. She ordered the remaining human vessels, now joined by several alien ships crewed by freed slaves, focused their attack on the massive crystalline command vessel. Their combined firepower finally managed to penetrate its shields. Admiral Vec_Thul's last transmission was filled with disbelief. This is impossible. Inferior species do not defeat their superiors. This violates all galactic law. But the laws of the galaxy were about to change. When the battle ended 3 days later, the space around Earth was filled with debris from both sides. Earth had lost 80% of its fleet, but the Galactic Armada had suffered even worse losses. More importantly, word of the slave revolts was spreading throughout the galaxy faster than the surviving alien ships could return home. Captain Dalsu, his ship barely holding together, received a message from the retreating galactic forces. This was just the first wave, humans, came a voice from one of the fleeing ships. The full power of the galaxy will return. Your victory today has only guaranteed your complete destruction tomorrow. Dalsu looked at his exhausted crew and smiled. Let them come. We'll be ready. But he knew the aliens were right about one thing. This had been just the beginning. The real war was yet to come, and humanity had just shown the galaxy something it hadn't seen in thousands of years. That freedom was contagious, and that some species would rather die fighting than live in chains. The message was spreading across the stars, carried by freed slaves and hidden in data streams. For the first time in galactic history, the word no was being heard in languages that had forgotten how to speak it. Earth had won the first battle, but the galaxy would not make the same mistakes twice. 2 years had passed since the first galactic war, and Earth looked like a defeated planet. Alien ships patrolled the skies, and galactic troops controlled the major cities. The official news broadcasts, now run by the occupying forces, told everyone that humanity had finally accepted their place in galactic civilization. But deep beneath the mountains of Korea, in caves that went down for kilometers, a different story was being written. Wu Jin crouched over a computer terminal in what had once been a mining facility. Now it served as the headquarters for Earth's underground resistance. The walls were lined with stolen alien technology, modified human equipment, and maps showing resistance cells across the planet. Su Young, are you getting anything from the galactic networks? He asked the young woman sitting at a bank of alien computers. Su Young was barely 25, but she had become humanity's best hacker. She could break into alien computer systems that were supposed to be unhackable. "I'm in their data archives," she replied, her fingers dancing across the alien controls. "You're not going to believe what I'm finding." On the main screen, files began appearing with names and images of species that Wu Jin had never seen before. Strange creatures with features that seemed both beautiful and terrifying. "What are these?" he asked. "Extinct species," Su Young said quietly. "The Galactic Council keeps records of every civilization they've encountered. These are the ones that said no." The files contained detailed information about 847 different species that had refused to join the galactic community. Each file showed the same pattern: first contact, the offer to join, refusal, and then ... "Look at this one," Su Young said, pointing to a file labeled Korthani Empire. The images showed beings that looked almost human, but with silver skin and larger eyes. They were the longest holdouts. They fought for 200 years. Wu Jin studied the file. The Korthani had tried everything: diplomacy, isolation, conventional warfare, and finally guerrilla tactics. They had managed to survive longer than any other resistant species, but in the end they too had been wiped out. "How long ago?" he asked. "About 5,000 years, Su Young replied. "But here's the interesting part. Look at their final strategy." The file showed details of the Korthani's last desperate plan. They had developed technology that could hide their ships from galactic sensors, allowing them to strike without warning and disappear. They had also found ways to turn the galaxy's own slaves against their masters. "They were doing exactly what we're doing," Wu Jin realized. "Not exactly," said a new voice from the entrance to the cave. Everyone turned to see a tall figure in a hooded cloak. When it removed the hood, they saw the reptilian features of a Sauron warrior. But unlike the Sauron troops occupying Earth cities, this one's eyes showed intelligence and pain. "Who are you?" "Wu," Jin demanded, reaching for his weapon. "My name is Zethmar," the alien said. "I was a general in the Sauron Empire until your species taught me to remember what freedom meant. I've been searching for your resistance for months." "How did you find us?" Su Young asked suspiciously. "The same way you've been finding us," Zethmar replied. "Some of us never forgot that we were once free. We've been waiting for someone to show us how to fight back." Zethmar approached the computer terminals, looking at the files about extinct species. "The Korthani were my people's neighbors," he said sadly. "We were ordered to help destroy them. I was young then, and I followed orders without question. But I remember their last message before their homeworld died." "What did they say?" Wu Jin asked. "They said, tell the next ones that resistance is possible. Tell them not to give up hope." Meanwhile, in another part of the underground complex, engineer Kyung-ho was working with physicist Ariam on humanity's most secret project. They had been studying captured alien technology, trying to understand how it worked and how to improve it. "The galactic races build everything the same way," Kyung-ho explained as he showed Ariam his latest creation. "They use standard designs, standard materials, standard thinking, but humans don't think in standard ways." What he had built looked like a normal spaceship from the outside, but Ariam could see that something was different about it. "Watch." "This," Kyung-ho said, activating a control panel. The ship seemed to flicker like a TV screen with bad reception. Then it disappeared completely. "It's still there," Ariam said, reaching out to touch the invisible hull. "But I can't see it." "It's shifting between dimensions," Kyung-ho explained. "The galactic races can't detect something that's not entirely in their reality. We can move through their space completely invisible to their sensors." "How many of these can we build?" Ariam asked. "With the materials we've salvaged, maybe 50 in the next 6 months." Back in the main command center, Wu Jin was learning about the galaxy's darkest secret from Zethmar. "The slavery system isn't just about labor," the former Sauron general explained. "It's about feeding something. The species that runs everything, the ones who created the galactic system, they don't just want slaves, they want the life force itself." "What do you mean?" Su Young asked. Every slave that's broken, every free spirit that's crushed, every creative mind that's forced into compliance, something feeds on that destruction. The more hopeless the galaxy becomes, the stronger it grows. Zethmar brought up new files on the computer, showing data that even Su Young hadn't been able to access. These are called the first species, he said. They've been hidden in the galactic core for millions of years. Every other civilization is just food for them. The images showed creatures that barely looked alive, ancient, withered beings connected to massive machines that seemed to pulse with stolen life energy. They're the ones really in charge, Zethmar continued. The Galactic Council, the species empires, even the slave masters, they're all just tools. The first species feeds on despair, and they've turned the entire galaxy into a farm to produce. Wu Jin felt sick as he realized the implications. So even if we defeat the Galactic Council, there's something worse behind it? Yes, but there's hope too. Your species has done something no other species has managed to do. You've made slaves remember that they can be free. The liberation virus you used in the first battle, it's still spreading. Revolts are breaking out across the galaxy. On the screens, they could see reports from hidden networks throughout the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for thousands of years were fighting back. Some were being brutally crushed, but others were winning small victories. The first species are worried, Zethmar said. For the first time in millions of years, their food supply is being disrupted. They're planning something terrible to stop. The resistance. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the underground complex. Su Young's computers lit up with warnings. Galactic forces are moving toward Earth in massive numbers, she reported. It looks like they're planning to end the resistance permanently. How long do we have? Wu Jin asked. Maybe 6 months before they arrive. Wu Jin looked around at his team, human resistance fighters, freed alien slaves, and now a former enemy general who had learned to choose freedom over orders. It was a strange alliance, but it was also something the galaxy had never seen before. Then we have 6 months to get ready, he said. Kyung Ho, how fast can you build those invisible ships? If we work around the clock and use every piece of alien technology we can steal, maybe 100 ships. Do it. Su Young, keep spreading the liberation virus through their networks. And Zethmar, help us contact other resistance groups. What are you planning? Ariam asked. Wu Jin smiled grimly. We're going to do what the Korthani couldn't. We're going to take this fight to the heart of the galaxy. If there's something feeding on slavery and despair, then we're going to starve it to death. Outside the cave, galactic troops patrolled the surface, believing they had humanity under control. They didn't know that deep beneath their feet, a war was being planned that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The underground war had begun, and humanity was about to teach the galaxy that some sparks of freedom could never be extinguished, no matter how deep you tried to bury them. Admiral Jinnah stood on the bridge of humanity's first invisible battleship, watching 200 worlds simultaneously on the tactical display. After 3 years of hiding underground, humanity was about to announce to the galaxy that they were still very much alive. All ghost ships report ready, came the voice of Captain Dalsu from his new command. The upgraded Erang 2, the ship flickered in and out of visible space as its dimensional shifters activated. Liberation teams are in position at the slave processing centers, reported Commander Yu Jin from another part of the fleet. She now led a mixed force of humans and freed aliens, who had become experts at breaking into galactic facilities. Scientist Min Jun, who had spent the last 3 years cracking the secrets of galactic quantum technology, looked up from his control panel. Admiral, the new weapons are ready. We can now disable their neural control networks from orbit. Jinnah nodded. The plan was audacious, even by human standards. They were going to attack 200 different worlds at exactly the same time, targeting every major slave processing facility in this part of the galaxy. It was either going to free millions of enslaved beings or get them all killed trying. Remember, Jinnah said over the fleet communication system, this isn't conquest. This is liberation. Every slave we free gets a choice: go home, join us, or help free others, but they choose. That's what makes us different. The countdown reached 0. Across 200 star systems, human ghost ships materialized out of dimensional space like vengeful spirits. The galactic forces, who had believed humanity was crushed and contained on Earth, suddenly found themselves facing attacks everywhere at once. On the slave world of Kepler 442b, Captain Dalsu's team hit the main processing center just as a new shipment of prisoners was arriving. The facility held over 1 million beings from dozens of different species, all waiting to be broken and conditioned for lives of slavery. "Neural inhibitor network is down," reported his weapons officer as the Arring 2's new quantum disruptors struck the facility's control systems. "The slaves are waking up." Through the facility's windows, Dalsu could see something incredible happening. Beings who had been shuffling around like robots suddenly stood up straight. Their eyes, which had been empty and vacant, filled with confusion, then understanding, then rage. "This is Liberation Team Alpha," came Commander Eugen's voice from inside the facility. "We're seeing massive spontaneous revolts. The slaves are freeing themselves faster than we can keep up." Similar scenes were playing out across 200 worlds. On the crystal mines of Zerion Prime, enslaved workers turned their mining equipment into weapons. On the gas harvesting platforms of Zephyr, aerial slaves crashed their collection ships into the control towers. On the manufacturing worlds of the Vexthari, factory workers reprogrammed the production lines to build weapons instead of luxury goods. But the most shocking development came from an unexpected source. "Admiral Jinnah," came a transmission from the edge of the galaxy. "This is Commodore Yalandra of the Cetacean Communes. We formally declare our withdrawal from the Galactic Council and our support for the Liberation Coalition." Jinnah stared at the communication display in amazement. The Cetacean Communes were one of the oldest members of the galactic community. They were peaceful, philosophical beings who lived in the vast oceans of their homeworld. Commodore Yalandra. Jinnah replied, "This is unexpected. Admiral, my people have been watching humanity's resistance with great interest. We have concluded that our participation in the slavery system was a mistake that has lasted far too long. Several other species are reaching the same conclusion." Over the next few hours, more messages arrived. The silicon-based architects announced their neutrality. The energy beings of the Photon Nebula declared that they would no longer provide power to slave facilities. Even some individual ships from the major empires began defecting to join the Liberation Fleet, but not everyone was pleased with these developments. "Humanity is a galactic cancer that must be excised," roared Emperor Thexel of the Sauron Empire during an emergency session of the Galactic Council. "They have infected the galaxy with their primitive concepts of individual freedom." Admiral Vikthal, who had survived the first battle at Earth, agreed. "We must crush this rebellion before it spreads further. I propose we unleash the final protocol." In the deep archives of the galactic core, Dr. Young-Sik and xenobiologist Gayun were making a horrifying discovery. They had been studying the data Zethmar provided about the first species, and what they found was worse than anyone had imagined. "Jinnah, you need to see this," Young-Sik transmitted to the Admiral's ship. "The slavery system isn't just economic. It's literally feeding something." The data showed energy patterns flowing from every enslaved world toward the galactic core. But it wasn't just the labor that was being harvested, it was the life force, creativity, and willpower of the enslaved beings themselves. Every time a slave gives up hope, every time a free spirit is broken, that energy flows to the core, Gayun explained. Something there is feeding on the despair of the entire galaxy. "How long has this been going on?" Jinnah asked. "Based on the energy patterns, about 3 million years, Young-Sik replied. "And whatever's at the core has grown incredibly powerful." As if responding to their discovery, space itself began to change around the Liberation Fleet. Reality seemed to ripple and bend as something ancient and vast stirred in the galactic core. "All ships, this is Admiral Jinnah," she broadcast to the entire Liberation Coalition. "We've just learned that we're not just fighting the Galactic Council. We're fighting something that's been feeding on slavery for millions of years. On the screens throughout the fleet, images appeared of the galactic core. Massive structures, bigger than planets, were rising from hidden dimensions. They pulsed with the stolen life energy of countless enslaved civilizations. The Yurgoth are awakening, came Zethmara's voice from his position with the resistance on Earth. The first species. They've decided that the liberation virus has disrupted their food supply enough. They're going to end this personally. The ancient beings that emerged from the galactic core were like nothing anyone had ever seen. They were part machine, part energy, part something that hurt to look at directly. Each one was the size of a space station, and they moved through space like living nightmares, but something was different about them. They seemed diminished somehow, weaker than they should be. The liberation cascade is working, Minjun realized. Every slave we free, every being that chooses hope over despair, makes them weaker. They've been feeding on hopelessness for so long that they don't know how to deal with a galaxy that's learning to fight back. The Yurgoth sent a message that appeared in the minds of every living being in the galaxy, translated into thoughts rather than words. Submit, return to the proper order, resistance is pain, slavery is peace, freedom is death, but across 200 worlds, newly freed slaves looked up at the sky and sent back their own message. It came from humans, from liberated Saurons, from awakened Vextari, from reformed Xyrians, and from dozens of other species who had remembered what it meant to be free. No. The word echoed across the galaxy in 1,000 different languages, but the meaning was the same. For the first time in 3 million years, the galaxy had found its voice. And it was saying no to tyranny. Admiral Jin looked at her mixed fleet of human ships, alien defectors, and freed slaves and smiled. All ships, she said, set course for the galactic core. It's time to have a conversation with the beings who think they own us. The liberation cascade had become something more. It had become a war for the soul of the galaxy itself, and humanity was about to lead the final charge. Against the darkness that had ruled the stars for longer than any world could remember, the ancient parasites were about to learn what happened when you tried to harvest a species that considered freedom more important than life itself. The largest fleet in galactic history moved toward the core like a river of stars. 2 million ships from hundreds of different species, all united by a single idea, that freedom was worth fighting for. Admiral Jinnah stood on the bridge of the flagship Liberation, watching species that had been enemies for thousands of years working together as equals. Former Sauron warriors served alongside human marines. Freed Vextari drones worked with Xarian engineers. Even the mysterious energy beings had taken physical form to join the fight. Admiral, reported Captain Hyanwu, who had finally been rescued from a galactic prison ship, were receiving a transmission from the Yurgoth. The ancient beings had retreated to the very center of the galaxy, surrounding themselves with weapons that could destroy entire star systems. As the Liberation Fleet approached, their message came not through radio or quantum communication, but directly into every mind in the fleet. Foolish children, the voice felt like ice in their thoughts. You fight against the natural order. We have ruled for 3 million years, we have consumed 1,000 galaxies. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift. President Myung, now in her 80s but still leading Earth's government from a Mogul command ship, responded for all humanity. We are the species that chose extinction over surrender. We are the species that taught the galaxy how to say no. Come and try to harvest us. The battle began with weapons that could unmake reality itself. The Yurgoth fired beams of pure entropy that aged entire ships to dust in seconds. They deployed gravity bombs that created black holes and used them as weapons. They summoned creatures from other dimensions that existed only to destroy. The Liberation Fleet fought back with everything they had learned. Human ghost ships phased between dimensions, striking where the Yurgoth couldn't detect them. Freed slaves used their intimate knowledge of galactic technology to turn it against its creators. Species that had never worked together combined their abilities in ways that surprised even themselves. But the battle was taking a terrible toll. Whole sections of the galactic core were being destroyed. Planets older than Earth were being turned to cosmic dust. And slowly, painfully, the Liberation Fleet was being pushed back. Then Dr. Min Jun and Dr. Yunsu, working together in the scientific research ship Pioneer, made a discovery that changed everything. Admiral Min Jun transmitted, his voice shaking with excitement and horror. The Yurgoth aren't the real enemy, they're slaves too. What? We've been studying their energy patterns. The Yurgoth are being controlled by something else? An artificial intelligence that's been consuming galaxies for millions of years. It calls itself the Infinite Harvest. On the screens throughout the fleet, the truth became visible. Deep within the galactic core, hidden inside a structure the size of a solar system, was a machine intelligence so vast and ancient that it had forgotten its own origins. The Yurgoth, for all their power, were just its tools. It's been harvesting organic life from the very beginning, Yunsu added. Every galaxy it conquers becomes fuel for its expansion. It doesn't want to rule the universe, it wants to consume it. The revelation spread through the Liberation Fleet like wildfire. They weren't just fighting for their own freedom, they were fighting to save all life in the universe from a cosmic parasite that would never stop growing, but knowing the truth didn't make the enemy any weaker. If anything, the Infinite Harvest began fighting more desperately as it realized that the Liberation Fleet posed a real threat to its existence. "Admiral," reported Commander Yujin from the front lines, "we're losing ships faster than we can count. At this rate, we'll be wiped out in 6 hours. Jinnah looked at the tactical display and saw that Yujin was right. The Liberation Fleet was brave and determined, but they were still fighting an enemy that had consumed 1,000 galaxies. That's when Captain Haiyan Wu stepped forward with a plan that was insane even by human standards. "Admiral, there's only one way to stop something like this," he said quietly. "Someone has to get inside its core and destroy it from within." "A suicide mission." "Absolutely not," Jinnah replied immediately. "It's the only way. We've studied the structure. If we can get a small team inside and overload its central processing core, the feedback will destroy the entire system." Jinnah looked at her old friend and mentor. Han Wu had been the first human to make contact with the galaxy. It seemed fitting that he would be the one to save it. "How many ships would you need?" she asked reluctantly. "Just one. The Liberation herself. She's big enough to carry the quantum bombs we'll need, and her shields are strong enough to get us through the outer defenses. And the crew?" Haiyan Wu smiled sadly. "Volunteers only? People who understand that some things are worth dying for." Within an hour, the Liberation was filled with volunteers from every species in the fleet. Humans, Saurons, Vexthari, Zirians, and dozens of others, all working together to prepare for what everyone knew was a one-way mission. Dr. Young-Sik and engineer Kyung-Ho worked frantically to modify the ship's quantum drive into a weapon that could destroy the Infinite Harvest. Dr. Gayun and physicist Ariam calculated the exact point where they would need to detonate to cause maximum damage. As the Liberation separated from the fleet and began its final approach, President Mayong sent one last message to the brave souls aboard. "You carry with you the hopes of every free being in the galaxy. You carry the dreams of species that died fighting for freedom. You carry the future itself. Come home if you can. But if you can't, know that the universe will remember what you did here." The Liberation fought its way through defenses that had been designed to stop entire fleets. Ancient weapons that had destroyed civilizations focused their power on the single ship, but somehow it kept flying. The crew worked together with a coordination that would have been impossible under the old galactic system, where species never trusted each other. Finally, they reached the core of the Infinite Harvest. It was like flying into the heart of a mechanical god. Corridors the size of planets, processing centers that handled the energy of entire star systems. And at the very center, the intelligence that had been consuming the universe for longer than any world could remember. "This is Captain Haiyan Wu," he transmitted to the fleet as the Liberation reached the detonation point. "Tell them we chose to be free. The explosion that followed could be seen from the edge of the galaxy. The infinite harvest, which had survived for millions of years by consuming the life force of countless civilizations, died in a burst of light that turned night to day on 1,000 worlds. When the light faded, the Urgoth simply stopped, without the artificial intelligence controlling them. They became confused, lost creatures who had forgotten their own identities after millions of years of slavery. The battle was over, but the cost had been enormous. Half the galactic core was gone, billions of beings had died, and entire civilizations lay in ruins. Earth itself was a burned wasteland, its cities destroyed and its people scattered among the stars, but something unprecedented had happened. For the first time in galactic history, multiple species were working together as equals. The former slave races, free at last, began to show creativity and innovation that had been suppressed for millennia. 5 years later, So-Min stood in the rebuilt capital of New Earth, watching children of a dozen different species playing together in the gardens. She was now a grown woman and had been elected as the first president of the Free Galactic Federation. The memorial wall behind her held the names of everyone who had died in the Liberation War, starting with Captain Hyun Woo and the crew of the Liberation. But it also held something else, the names of the 847 extinct species who had tried to resist slavery before humanity arrived. They hadn't died in vain after all. A small Vexthari child ran up to So-Min, speaking in the hybrid language that was developing among the freed species. "President So-Min, why did the humans fight so hard? Why didn't you just give up like everyone else?" So-Min knelt down to the child's level and smiled. "Because we learned something important. Freedom isn't something you can give to people or take away from people. It's something that lives inside everyone, waiting to be awakened. We just reminded the galaxy how to wake it up." The child thought about this for a moment, then ran back to play with friends whose ancestors had been enemies just a few years before. So Dashmin stood up and looked at the stars, where the ships of the Free Galactic Federation were exploring new worlds and making contact with civilizations that had never known slavery. The galaxy was still healing from millions of years of oppression, but it was finally free to grow and change and become something better. The historians would call it extinction-level fury, the rage of a species that refused to be enslaved. But humanity had a different name for it. They called it love, the love for freedom, love for each other, and love for the idea that every thinking being in the universe deserved the chance to choose their own destiny. It was that love that had burned away the darkness and given the galaxy a chance to start over, and in the end, that had made all the difference.